Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chasing rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with the steady beat, have not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sighed. We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughter. Out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world we forgot us, shallowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land.
That was a beautiful rendition of Lift Every Voice and Sing, the Black National Anthem. Did you know that the Black National Anthem was originally written as a poem by James Weldon Johnson, then set to music by his brother John? And since James was a school principal, he had his 500 school children perform the song as a celebration for President Lincoln in 1900. Well, not only here at Westlake do we hope that you've enjoyed what you've heard so far, but we would like to sincerely welcome you as a staff to stay and participate and enjoy the rest of our Westlake High School Black History Month virtual assembly.
To me, Black History Month means a celebration of the Black community. This month allows people to learn and be inspired. It is a tribute to all the Black leaders throughout history. It also showcases Black inventors, artists, poets, businesses, etc. Black history is important because Black people have contributed a lot to the world we live in. It is important for us as a society to acknowledge that. Black History Month is without a doubt my favorite time of year. I love seeing my community honor each other and praise one another.
Black History Month is a yearly reminder of how my ancestors had to fight for their freedom and mine. Many lost their lives for wanting freedom, and I would like to honor them this month. Black History Month to me means remembering what they did. They endured their horrible treatment so the next generation and the ones after that wouldn't have to. Honor the past, for they gave you a future.
Black History Month is a celebration and a time to recognize and shine a spotlight on the achievements made by African Americans. Black History Month is a time for everybody to learn about the achievements of African Americans and to give people a better understanding of Black culture. It is a chance to learn more about the heroes we learn about in school, such as Rosa Parks or Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and unsung heroes that we do not learn about in school, such as Claudette Colvin or Gloria Richardson. It is an opportunity for people everywhere to learn more and to go beyond the discussion of racism and slavery.
Black history is American history, no matter how someone may look at it. We as Black people in this country have been oppressed and resented for centuries and still are to this day. I remember the times when my parents had to teach me what the color of my skin would mean in the real world. Black History Month is a time where Black Americans can feel empowered because of the people just like them who were equally oppressed and seemingly neglected by society will be able to succeed.
Black History Month, for me, is a celebration for all people to include themselves in, to learn, reflect, and enjoy.
The Harlem Renaissance is one of the most iconic cultural periods in African American history. Throughout the decade of the 1920s, Black writing, art, and music flourished, ushering in a cultural revolution that rocked the United States.
One of the most important factors that accounted for the rise of what we know of as the Harlem Renaissance is the migration of Black peoples from the South to urban centers like Harlem.
The Jim Crow era began after Reconstruction, and every Southern African American had to think about, what should we do? Should we go or should we stay? For many of these people, it was a matter of life and death, literally.
Sometimes in the most repressive times, we create the most extraordinary art.
Amidst the fervor of the Great Migration, bold, exciting forms of Black music evolved, along with venues to listen and dance to this music. Blues and jazz clubs became a central part of life in Harlem, where artists such as Louis Armstrong and Duke Ellington, Bessie and Mamie Smith rose to prominence.
He went away and never even said goodbye.
The era also saw the burgeoning of literary work by and about African Americans, which the writer Alain Locke compiled into an anthology. He called it The New Negro, and its name came to define a movement.
The Harlem Renaissance is a facet of a larger movement that we think of as the New Negro movement, where you have a new generation of Black people, by this point, 2 generations out of slavery, using the arts as a way to help people gain broader civil and political rights.
Some of the framers of what became the Renaissance make the argument that the artistic worth of a people has to be proven by the worth of the art and literature they produced, and especially for people that historically, over centuries, have been defined as without culture, without history, and without any record of achievement.
The Harlem Renaissance was the flowering of creativity that had been suppressed for centuries. People that had the sense that things were opening up, and finally, we can be the people that we imagine ourselves to be.
My black is bold, beautiful, benevolent, and brash. My black is magnetic, mesmerizing, and merciful. My black is captivating, creative, cunning, and cool. My black is flawed, authentic, loyal, and irreplaceable. To tell the truth, my black is what it is. A gift to the world.
Oh Lord, must I do unto others before they do unto me? Must I arm myself to protect myself from harm and injury? Do you know that it's not the lesson that I learned of my mother's knees when she told me to do unto others only what I had them do unto me, unto me.
Lord, must I do unto others before they do unto me? Must I harm myself to protect myself from harm and injury? Don't you know that it's not the lesson that I learned on my mother's knee when she told me to do unto others only what I have them do unto me.
What I have them do, Lord, must I do unto others before they do unto me? Must I arm myself to protect myself from harm and injury? Don't you know that it's not a lesson that I learned on my mother's knee when she told me to do unto others only what I have them do unto me, only what I have them do unto me, yeah, only what I have them do unto me.
Nearly a century after the end of the Civil War and the dawn of Reconstruction, African Americans still found themselves fighting for their basic rights as citizens. The modern civil rights movement in the mid-20th century finally secured them.
Most historians actually date the start of the formal civil rights movement to Brown versus Board of Education. Brown really stokes the fervor of the nation. Then, in December of 1955, Rosa Parks decided as an act of resistance that she would not give up her seat to a white man on the bus.
Rosa Parks' deliberate act of resistance led to a bus boycott that thrust into the limelight a young preacher with a PhD. He would become one of the movement's most charismatic leaders. His name was the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
One of the most iconic moments is the March on Washington in 1963, led by Martin Luther King Jr.
200,000 people converge on the nation's capital to rally for civil rights. They come united in one cause.
One day right now in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today.
This becomes visualized on the news and begins to change the way that Americans are starting to think about the civil rights movement.
As the civil rights movement attained greater visibility, it was often met with increased brutality and violence. Yet in the midst of so much sacrifice and heartbreak, the work of civil rights activists began to bear fruit.
In 1964, President Lyndon Johnson signs the Civil Rights Act of '64, and that's designed to desegregate businesses and government employment. And then in 1965, President Johnson signs the Voting Rights Act of '65.
The passage of the Voting Rights Act was a monumental victory for African Americans. Tragically, just 3 years after it was passed, Dr. King would be assassinated. Many feel looking back that the movement died that day, but in fact, the movement took on new forms and continued. And it must continue today, as important victories such as the Voting Rights Act are under attack.
Until we deal with the fact that the backlash is often made possible not just by the other side growing in power, but by those who claim to care about equality losing their own resolve, there will be moments of this cycle happening over and over again.
Jerusalema ikhaya lami ilondoloze uhambe nami zungangishilana Jerusalema ikhaya lami ilondoloze uhambe nami zungangishilana dawo yami ayikholana buso wami awukholana ilondoloze zuhambe nami dawo yami ayikholana buso wami awukholana ilondoloze dawo yami ayikholana buso wami awukholana ilondoloze zuhambe nami dawo yami ayikholana buso wami awukholana ilondoloze zuhambe nami
Ida B. Wells was born into slavery in 1862 and grew up during Reconstruction, when black men were able to vote and more than 2,000 African Americans held public office. When many of the gains of Reconstruction were reversed during the rollback that followed, Ida B. Wells fought back with her pen. In 1892, her dear friend Thomas Moss was dragged from a jail cell, shot, and lynched by a mob of white men. Devastated, she channeled her journalistic efforts into one of her most famous pieces, Southern Horrors, an unflinching investigative report of the causes of lynching in Jim Crow America.
Ida B. Wells is important as an activist against lynching, but she's also important as someone who sort of harnesses the growing literacy to tell a different narrative of Black America.
Combining statistics and investigative reporting, Wells's publications drew attention to the wrongful convictions of African Americans. But her pioneering work came at a price. Her office vandalized, her life threatened, she was driven out of Memphis. This terrorism only made Ida B. Wells determined to write even more.
One of the most important things about Ida B. Wells is that she actually sets the record straight. Her journalism and the Black press are constantly keeping that dissenting voice in American society.
Wells continued to publish and fight injustice until her death in 1932. Her reporting techniques serve today as basic principles of modern investigative journalism.
A lot of social norms from me growing up was based on white people. It was based on what was always the main character. In this case, Black History Month for me is to embrace who I am and what I look like. For me to become comfortable with me. To not have to worry about being called dirty or ugly or ghetto. But for me to be me as the person I always was. It just took a little while to show. Black History Month is beauty. Its expression is me.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I've been working with my face turned to the sun. Weight on my shoulders, a bullet in my gun. Oh, I got eyes just in case I have to run. I do what I want when I can for my people. While the clouds roll back and the stars fill the night, that's when I'm gonna stand up, take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home, far across the river. Can you hear freedom calling me to answer? Gonna keep on keeping on. I can feel it in my bones.
Thank you for watching our Black History Month virtual assembly. We hope that you truly enjoyed it.